Have you seen Parasite?
I haven't. I'm sorry, I haven't. I'm a bad Asian.
How? You're... No, just you gotta watch Parasite. It is so good.
I'm not a huge fan of like thriller or that type, like that genre. I'm not a huge fan, but
Really?
yeah. But a lot of my friends who aren't fans of horror or thriller say it's really good and they really enjoyed it. So I'm finding the right time to watch it where I'm a little bit more fearless. Also, I'm in like the coming of age movie mood right now because that's basically what I'm writing about. So like,
Okay.
I need to be in that mindset. So I rewatched Lady Bird. If you've seen that.
I haven't, but I recently watched I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, so I feel like we're in the same brainwave here. Okay, we should get started.
Okay. Hello and welcome for the very first time to the Fingerboard Brew. I'm Annie Ann and I'm here with my co-host. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Evan. You can find me at ouse.fb on I think it's ouse on.
It's ouse underscore, I think.
We're off to a rocky start. No, so you can find me at ouse_FB on Instagram. I'm also ouse on YouTube. So yeah, and we're here to talk about if you need a $150 fingerboard. But why don't we first start off and talk about kind of our idea for the podcast and why we started it and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so do you remember how or why we started it?
Well, I remember the first time we spoke, like talking, like not over text, was your Instagram live, and we talked for like an hour and a half. And there were a couple people like, "You should start a podcast," and we didn't acknowledge it for like 2 months. But yeah,
Actually, no one said in the live stream you should do a podcast. I think like someone referenced that we should collab together. Like someone was. Goopberry, shout out Goopberry, was asking like some really hard hitting questions in the live stream.
Yeah.
And we were just like talking and we were just like bouncing off of each other so easily.
Well, I just meant I got a handful of direct messages that were like, "Are you and Annie Ann planning on doing a podcast?" That's what I was referencing. I didn't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. I didn't get
Yeah,
that.
sorry.
But it was like sort of like 30 minutes into us talking, I already like the idea of starting a podcast with you immediately hit me. And I was like, I'm not going to talk about on the live stream because I know that oh wait, no, I think I very quickly said, "Hey Evan, we should start a podcast together," like as a joke, but low-key a little bit serious. And then after the live stream, I asked Evan, do you want to start a podcast together? Because I think we could do a really, really good job, especially with our background in film, which is like how we're giving you a video version of this podcast. Like if you don't know, we're making video versions of the podcast. It's the same audio, but you can see our faces. And if we ever reference anything visual, we'll put it up on the screen or we'll like show you. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was we both agreed on that and kind of came to the table wanting to do a video version over just an audio only because of our background in film and photography. So yeah, this is what you have. Plus we have our nice vignette backgrounds that definitely didn't take us a month to figure out. We just got those first try. It wasn't a painstaking process and an entire episode recorded with a horrible background on my part that we had to reshoot, and none of that happened. This is seamless. So yeah, I'm really excited to get this out there because what is going to set our podcast apart, hopefully from other podcasts, is we're not going to necessarily just do interviews, because there are great fingerboard podcasts out there. Like Switchcraft does amazing interviews, and like they definitely have that covered. What we want to do is bring something a little different to the table. And so really the podcast just was born from all the conversations that Annie and I have already. We figured, why don't we just, I feel like we both have a lot of information to share. We've been in the scene for a while. So why not collaborate our ideas and put them into a podcast, because it's what we love doing anyway. So why not
Yeah,
record it?
so like like some examples of what we're going to talk about is like Evan said, we're going to be talking about today like whether or not the gear, like the gear of your fingerboard matters. So like whether the cost matters. In episode 3, which I think is something you guys are really going to enjoy, is we're going to talk about the move basically from YouTube to Instagram, like the scene moving from YouTube to Instagram essentially, because I think both Evan and I, well, at least I entered this scene in like right before the transition to Instagram. I entered the scene when it was still on YouTube, but then like maybe a year or two later, it basically started moving to Instagram. So yeah, we'll be talking about stuff like that, which I don't think anyone has really done. If they have, I'm very sorry. At least I don't think they've done something like this in English. I know there are other fingerboard podcasts. Just I think there's one from Indonesia. I think there's probably others too. I just never listened to them really.
That's so rad to think that there are like people just all over the world doing the same
I know.
stuff and different languages and dialects, and that's awesome. I didn't even know that. But yeah, I think that we got something cool here. So if we don't, then no one will watch it, and we'll just keep putting these out, and it'll just be like fun for us. But I hope that it's fun for more people. So yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add before we get into this very interesting topic that we've chosen for today?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Oh, the tea. What tea are you drinking?
Oh, I'm having some English breakfast. Very, very light English breakfast. I just sort of let the tea bag steep for like a minute and I took it out because it's nighttime for me.
Yeah.
That's something that we should discuss. Like the name sort of came up because Evan and I are on different parts of the world. So we're, I think, exactly 12 hours apart in time. And, you know, whenever Evan is awake, I'm usually asleep. Like for most of the day, we have these very few hours in like the morning for Evan where we can record. But the whole idea is basically like you're drinking a brew either at night or in the morning. So in the morning for me, I'd be drinking coffee, whilst at night, potentially, Evan would be drinking tea before bed.
Exactly.
So kind of that type of concept.
So, yeah, we have like 4 hours a day, you know, like to talk and collaborate. And then it's just like you're asleep and then that's it. Like, you know, and that's why it makes this podcast particularly unique, because like we'd get into really in-depth conversations and then have a lot to run with, and it's like one of us would have to go to bed, you know, like we didn't have all day to collaborate. So that's another reason why it's taken so long. I mean, we've been hyping this up on Instagram for probably like a month, and people are like, put it out tomorrow, and it's like, oh, it's just not that easy.
Yeah.
Especially at this stage when we're still kind of figuring things out. But anyway, off topic. I am drinking a tea that I found at the grocery store, and it's called Pomegranate Pizzazz, and it is horrible.
Your favorite tea.
It's good. I like it. I'd say it's my favorite tea because I have said it's my favorite tea, but I've only had like 5 different teas in my life. Like I need to like broaden my horizons, but you know.
All right. So for this episode, we're going to be talking about fingerboard gear, and we're basically going to explore the question, does the gear matter, and do you need a $150 setup? So, yeah.
So, right off the bat, the short answer is no, but it's a bit more complicated than that. So, yeah, let's, as I like to do, start at the beginning and go chronologically. What was your first...
Like in The Sound of Music, start from the very beginning. A very good place to start.
Exactly. This is The Sound of Music. That's exactly. So what was your first like tech decks aside? Like what was your first good professional setup?
Um, I remember so clearly it was a Berlin wood. I don't actually remember which, like if it was a pro model or anything like that. I don't think it was, but it was purple, and blue and white with some skeletons on it. It was like 29 millimeters. And I had rip tape because that's what it came with, Bali trucks, and Bali wheels, which were like no bearings.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never did any of the. Do Bali setups come with bearings now?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either. I never had Bali
I
stuff,
have
but
no
that
clue.
was before like because now you have like all these cool companies like Fingerboard Connoisseur where you can get like trucks that aren't a bajillion dollars, but like at the time it was like Bali was at least on my radar that was like the only option for something that wasn't BRTs. But
Yeah.
um yeah,
How about you?
mine was a well, I had like there was this company in America called Finger Decks, and I bought a complete from them. But like my first, well, no, yeah, that was my first like professional fingerboard was that was like my first professional fingerboard just because like I eventually did get a really expensive setup, but yeah, that was like I think I probably spent like $20-$30 on that. That had like skate grip on it, and it was a blank deck, and the wheels had bearings, but they didn't roll. Like so, yeah, it was cheap for sure, but it was better than I mean, it was unmatched to anything I had previously bought. So yeah, it was pretty good.
What was the setup after that?
Well, that was like my first real expensive $150 setup was it was a 29 millimeter Berlin wood. Like it was just a purple deck with the Berlin wood logo on it, and then a pair of 29 millimeter Black River trucks and a pair of it was Winkler wheels, these blue Winkler wheels at the time. The color scheme at the time I thought was so cool. It was like purple and red and blue, and I look back at it now and it was just horrible. Like I just got like all these like pastel colors and they did not go together at all. But yeah, I still have those trucks. I have one of the trucks. The other one did like the kingpin busted on it. And I have the wheels still. I don't know what happened to the deck though, which kind of makes me sad because like that was my first deck ever and I don't have it anymore. So yeah, that
I
was
remember my second. Sorry, continue.
well. No, that's all I was saying. It was just kind of like a bummer that I don't have that anymore. But yeah, what was your second?
My second was a Bali deck because I thought the elephant was really, really cute. Like, I don't know if you know what the Bali, like,
Mm-hmm.
you probably do, the Bali
Yeah.
logo. I thought the elephant was just adorable. So I was like, I want that board without understanding, like, those decks weren't super high quality or anything like that. Um, but yeah, that was my second board.
Yeah, but I mean, but I think that buying decks for the art of it as well as the performance is part of it because like I have fingerboards that I'm never going to ride just because I love the graphic too much. The setup I'm currently riding, I love the graphic on it. It's the Sunrise Cascadia unique deck, but I mean,
Mm,
the park I built, I used like metal that I didn't like sand or do any processing to. It's just like raw metal that I bought at the store, and it like the first session I tore the graphic apart. Like it's like unrecognizable now. So it's one of those
damn.
things where it's like I'd honestly almost prefer a blank deck just to fingerboard on, and then all the decks that I collect have like cool graphics and stuff. Like yeah, but
So,
that's off
so
topic.
you're more of a blanks and split ply guy, I'm guessing, for
Not I mean, for
doing the
riding,
tricks.
yes. Just because it's like, then when you get a fingerboard and you like take really good care of it for a little bit, like you can't have like an awesome session with it just because you don't want to screw up the graphic. But like once you get that first mark in it, you're like whatever. Like that's kind of where I'm coming from. Whereas like my first decks were blank decks, so I never had to worry about like losing a graphic. It just already came without one. So yeah. So
That's fair.
what was the what was the conversation like? Because I assume that did you use your own money to buy your first like good Fingerboard?
No, I was 14. Like
Okay.
I did not have my own money. Um,
I did.
it was
I did have my
oh,
own
I
money.
didn't.
I bought my
Okay,
first one
so
with my own money, but
I had my own money, but it was from I don't know if you're familiar with what happens during Chinese New Year. Like
no,
we
not
get
at
red
all.
packets of money basically.
Okay.
So like some years when I was younger, I would get something like the equivalent of, let's say, like $600
Okay.
um which isn't a lot, I don't think. And like looking back, that's like that's one freelance job.
Yeah.
But back then, that's a lot of money for a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used my debit card, which was with like obviously like linked up to my dad's account.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
No, that's crazy to think about. Like, you're right. That, I mean, at the time that was so much money, and now it's just like, it's like,
But like we're talking about this as though this were like the olden days where like $600 was the equivalent of what $1 million is. Like, no, I just mean
exactly, yeah.
like at 14, $600 feels like a lot of money.
No, when we were buying fingerboards, a piece of candy was 5 cents, and there were soda fountains, and we're old. Like, when you were a kid, was your money like your money? Like, you were allowed to do what you wanted with it?
Is that on topic?
Well, for getting a fingerboard. Because, like,
Yeah.
I was not permissed to use my own money to buy a fingerboard for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I had to, like, convince my parents.
I think like at the time, I think it's because you lived with your parents. Like at the time I was at boarding school. So number one, my parents didn't really have any control over what I did buy. I would
Okay.
still tell them, I would still run it by them, or eventually they'd find out in the bank statement. But
Yeah.
my parents were very like whatever about it, especially since like I said, I'm so far away, so there's nothing. It's not that they can't do anything about it, because I don't think I spend crazy. Like I think about every purchase I make. I don't just spontaneously buy something.
Okay.
But at the time I still ran it by my parents just to be like, hey, I want to buy this. And they're like, I don't understand what it is, but okay. Like they kind of understood like when I brought it home.
Okay. Yeah, that's a unique perspective. I didn't even think about that. Was, like being thousands of miles away and kind of being your own person. Because like I was like, I still like.
You still tell your parents?
I still run stuff by my parents, and it's like, I mean, they wouldn't be like, don't do that. They'd be like, don't be an idiot, and but yeah, no, I just remember like long conversations about like, oh no, they make them exactly like skateboards. And I think their biggest hesitation was that I was going to get it and then use it for like a week and then ditch it, which I feel like, I mean, I used to live with three guys, and they all wanted to get into fingerboarding, and they got Berlin Woods, Black River trucks, and Flat Face wheels. Like all three of them got like crazy $150 setups, and none of them fingerboard anymore, and so it's like,
yeah,
it's kind of easy to impulse buy stuff in this in the scene, and when people get into it. But I feel like that's with every hobby. You want to get like the best of the best right when you start out, but it's like,
yeah,
I
think actually that's a really good like kind of transition into what like I was thinking about with this topic, and that is so like the first thing is, I feel like when we first started out, there wasn't really an in-between option. There was like China projects, so there was like Broken Knuckle, or like what was the other one? Four corner fingerboards.
I have not thought about four corner fingerboards in a while.
Four corner fingerboards, guys. That's a really long time ago. I don't even know if that still exists.
You don't know?
I have no idea.
I
have no clue.
Wow.
But like at the time, like Broken Knuckle today and Broken Knuckle then were also two very different things. But like we'll talk about that a bit later. But at the time, there really wasn't an in-between option. It was sort of you get a Berlin wood or you get something really, really cheap.
When you say at the time, what year are you referring to?
I'm talking about like 2014.
Okay. Yeah, that was for both of us because we both started, like, we both got our good setups like in 2014. Like, we kind of track at the same pace at that point. And so, yeah, I just wanted to establish for people who might not have known that we haven't been doing this forever.
No. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. So it reminded me of sort of, I think the $150 setup isn't necessary, but I think it helps a lot.
Yeah. Especially back then.
It helped, like, especially back then without that that in between. Whereas now, obviously, there are like things in between where you can get something for like 20 to 25 bucks, like just the deck itself, and it's still decent quality and you can still really use it. Whereas at the time, I just remember like China trucks feeling so different from I'm a Y trucks girl, so like I love I still love Y trucks. I used to love them before because that back then that was before dynamic trucks existed too. And you know, Y trucks versus China trucks, or even BRTs versus China trucks, was such a huge difference, because I think that China trucks aren't made necessarily to be customized. They're kind of made to, I also don't think they're made to last,
That's
or
true as well.
made to be like super usable. Whereas, like, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what you think. Like, I definitely think there's a huge difference in how they feel, especially when you're first starting out. It's harder. I thought it was harder to use a broken knuckle deck with broken knuckle trucks and wheels in comparison to, say, like a Berlin wood with better trucks. Like, the wheels didn't matter too much to me, if I'm honest, but it was the trucks and the deck.
That's funny. For me, it's the wheels and the deck, and I could take or leave the truck. I just care about like the bushings.
Really?
Yeah, I know. I should say that I am an adult and I have my own money, so when I go, and I don't collect fingerboards. That's the other thing.
Adult.
I am an adult. No, I don't collect fingerboards. I have one setup. And like when I retire that setup, I will get a new setup. But it's like I won't retire my setup until I lose it. Like the fingerboard I had before my current one, I had for 2.5 years. And then quick tangent. I've been to Chili's one time in my life and I lost my fingerboard there and I am never going back. Anyway, so like because of that and because I only buy one and it's not like I have like my street setup and my granite setup and stuff, like I will spend a lot of money to have quality because I know that I'm going to need it to last a while and I use it every single day. And you can get away with some of the more inexpensive products if you're not putting them through the ringer every single day. But like, that's kind of why I feel like, and that's honestly a good segue into the point that I want to make, that when you buy trucks, we'll take trucks, for example. When you buy trucks that are, $50, you're not only paying for like, you're not paying for like some name brand or something like that. You're paying for the quality of the trucks, like the build quality and the durability of it. And there's an old saying in photography. I don't know if you are familiar. It's with, if you buy cheap, you buy twice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the same in film too.
You can get a kit of 3 soft boxes for $100, but they're not going to last you on set, and when they do give out, that's, I mean, you have to void a whole contract. So, but like my lights, for example, I, spent a decent amount of money on them, but I know they're always going to work. And it's the same thing with the gear. Like I won't have to worry about like my setup falling apart 4 times a session just because I know that I bought quality components. So what are your thoughts on
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's basically my kind of philosophy with gear is, if you buy something that's cheaply made, and there's also a difference between something being cheap and something being inexpensive. Like have you seen Vortex trucks? I think is that the new truck company?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of like branding themselves as bridging the gap between there are all these different truck companies, and they have like a graph on their Instagram page, but it basically has like you got like your China trucks, then you got like your dynamic wide trucks, BRTs, but there's like this gap from like the $20 to $40 range. I hit my pop filter twice now. There's a gap in the graph, and so that's where he's coming in, or they. I don't know who it is, but is it really? Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Anyway, the truck, I think they're around like $25.
It's like 23 plus shipping, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah, just like bridging the gap between and so between like the cheap trucks and the expensive trucks, and that's kind of where I'm saying where they're not going to be as expensive as BRTs, but that doesn't mean that the quality's not going to be there. So they would be considered inexpensive. And again, I haven't tried them out yet, so I couldn't like vouch for them, but from what I've seen with like the pictures on the Instagram and stuff, I mean, they look awesome.
So the thing with Vortex, I promoted them onto my Instagram actually because and actually I don't know by the time you guys have like this is up, I don't know if I would have tried any by now, but I was really excited because it was a female owned company, and obviously we've seen like a huge rise in women in fingerboarding, specifically as in like people who play with fingerboards, but not a lot of women who make stuff, in my opinion. And I just thought it was really cool. But something that was brought to my attention is the fact that the hangers are still like the China hangers.
Are they really?
Whereas the base plates are what she's sort of trying to bridge the gap on.
Okay.
So I'm interested to see how that holds up, because I feel like the most important part is actually the hanger, and I just really hope that at some point she finds a version, or she can try to get a version of the trucks where she makes the hangers, but then maybe the base plates are China, like if she needs them to be, if that's how she's going to bridge the gap, you know?
Well, I think a huge problem that some truck companies have are their base plates. They strip too easily. The lock nut will, or the kingpin, or what is the... It's a lock nut, and then what does dynamic have? It screws in. It's they call that like
a kingpin.
That's a kingpin?
Inverted kingpin.
Inverted kingpin. Thank you. I'm going crazy today. Like those unthreading very quickly and stuff. And I know that like Dynamic had some problems with that, but I think like the newest iteration of their trucks kind of solved that problem. That's at least what I've heard. I haven't had that issue at all, like ever, with any pair of Dynamic trucks that I own. So like I can't really speak to it, but so I think that as you start, a truck company is also unique because have you ever heard how much it costs to start a truck company?
I don't even want to know, because I don't even want to know how much it takes to like make or like, work with metal. Anything in that family.
You could buy a relatively small, but you could probably buy a house. Like you could definitely buy a car. Like it is a lot. And so to like basically want to get into the game, it's a huge investment. So I wouldn't knock Vortex for using China hangers off the bat, just because I think that they look pretty awesome. But, time will tell, and we're both probably going to have them at some point. So, to be continued.
I plan on buying them. I plan on buying a set, and I think Katie said she was going to send me a set free with those two.
Interesting. So okay. Are they based out of America, or where are they?
No, they're New Zealand.
I want to go to New Zealand so bad. just completely unrelated. You ever watch those the Lord of the Rings movies?
Yeah, I was gonna say like that's where Lord of the Rings is shot.
It is just next level. As a photographer, anyway. Wow.
Oh my god, the drone footage you could get, my god.
I am out for drones. Have you ever owned or worked with a DJI drone?
I have a Mavic.
The lag that I have experienced just has ruined shoots for me. And I'm like, if I buy a drone, I'm gonna take like $2,000 and get like the controller with the screen built in with the no lag, just because like I can't deal with like, oh, everything's working, but then my phone dies, you know? Like I have always had issues with drones. And so I had a drone. I actually had a Spark, which is kind of lame, but that's the only one I've worked with. I've used an Inspire before, but like I owned a Spark and it was super disappointing, and I only had it for a couple months and then I sold it. But yeah, that's one of those things. I bought the cheap drone and it didn't work. So
but while we're on trucks, it's interesting that for you the deck, like earlier you were saying the deck and the wheels are what matter to you the most. Whereas for me, I think the trucks, currently at least, trucks are what are really important for me. Obviously, the deck matters, like, no doubt. But the trucks right now for me, seriously, like, I don't like spending a ton of money on trucks. I don't know what it is, but, like, I will drop $45 for a deck, but it'll be really difficult for me to do the same for trucks.
Really?
Not that I wouldn't do that for, Dynamics or Y trucks or BRTs, whatever. It's more like, I think the concept of it, but I don't know why. But yeah, trucks are so important to me, which is why I currently like pretty much own, like all my setups right now have the expensive trucks, like the high-end trucks. But the China truck game has really, really changed, I think. Because back when we started fingerboarding, I think, the only China trucks that I knew of that were available were flat-face dump trucks. And then obviously like the broken knuckle, four corner, whatever. But dump trucks were somehow valued higher, as in like people would trust them more.
Yeah.
And they were also only available in 29 millimeter. Now, the China truck game has changed so much because they now have the BRT copy, the BRT style hangers and lock nuts, which means, like, for me at least, like, I own now like 3 or 4 pairs of those because I think they're so much better. And obviously that also has to do with the companies that quality control them. Fingerboard Connoisseur, we were just talking about him earlier. Casey really, really goes through every single lock nut and every single screw, every single base plate, and every single hanger to make sure that everything is perfect. So he'll spot, because he told me something like, if like there's 100% of the trucks, only 75% of them will work.
Really?
Like fully, only 75%. There might be a few trucks where 2 screws will go in, but then like other 2 won't work properly, and he'll just bail on them or he'll use them himself, but he would never sell them.
And that's what's really cool about a company like Fingerboard Connoisseur is you can tell that, like, because he quality controls, like, he's not just trying to like do this for like a quick buck or anything. Like, he is trying to make like quality products so people have quality products. And I definitely think that we're seeing more of that nowadays. Like, it's, if people are going to sell something inexpensive, they want to make sure that it's good. And there is, like you've been saying this whole time, there's so much more competition now. Like, there was just so few companies back when we started getting into it, that it was like your setup either cost $30 or $150, where now your setup could cost like $90, just because of all these different companies. And here's the other thing, and this is what I don't think that we've really thought about or really talked about outside of this, but like, you can have a $250 setup now, with all these other companies. And, our opinion on hype companies is the same. And I don't think it's super positive. But, like there are companies out there now that sell really expensive gear. And, if that's like your sort of thing, if you're a collector or if you really believe in that. But I would argue that anything more than around $150, and that's why we put the price point there, is unnecessary the right word? Because they have their place in the community, but like I don't. It's hard to top the quality at a certain point,
I will say that the hype companies that exist, I don't think exist. Like, for example, like I'm going to give an example because I support them. Flint Fingerboards is a company that is very, very hyped up. I think part of it is because the company makes themselves very like exclusive and stuff like that. But a lot of it also has to do with the people who buy them. Like, I know people, like good friends of mine in fingerboarding, will buy them for more than $200.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never pay for more than that, but I think they want them because they're probably going to end up framing them or something like that. Like they just really, really appreciate the art, which I totally respect. That's like completely okay. But I agree that at a certain point, nothing can top. Like I feel like the max I would pay for a fingerboard is $50.
For like a deck,
excluding shipping, for a deck.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, but again, like my investment is like every other year. It's not. I do not buy fingerboard stuff. I don't collect fingerboard stuff. I should, because it's awesome, and I have started a smaller deck collection, but I don't know. It just like that's never really been my thing. I was really into ramps for a while, but then I sold some of those just because I wasn't using them, and I'd rather somebody else get the joy out of having that ramp than it just like sitting collecting dust on my shelf. But
yeah.
So before we wrap, we need to touch on one more thing, which is, Annie, why are fingerboard parts so expensive?
Okay, so I actually made a video about this on my channel, and my opinion hasn't changed, but there were a lot of things that I didn't talk about or reference in that specific video that I think would be good to talk about now.
Mm-hmm. So if you haven't watched the video yet, pause, go watch Annie's video, because it covers everything you need to know. But there's some other
that video like popped off with a lot of company owners. Like they would message me and they were like, thank you so much for making this video, because I get basically hate messages from people saying, why is everything so expensive, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But one of the points is kind of like, to start a fingerboard company takes it's not a lot of money. I think someone told me that nowadays you could start a fingerboard company. You could start making your own decks if you invest like $100 or 150 or 200, something like that. So the investment is really low. But then when you want to bring the quality up, that is where the priciness of boards come in, I think. And maybe like as someone who is a bit of a woodworker, you can talk a bit about that. But like I say in my video, a lot of it is time and effort that it takes to make a deck, and a lot of it is also the materials. It's about the craftsmanship. So a lot of the boards that you see now, I use beast pants as an example, but I can also use bosswood as an example. I don't remember how much a bosswood is now. I think it's something around $40. And a beast pants is like $39. Mm-hmm. A unique is closer to $50 now. I think it's like $40, $45. Some decks are $50 depending on which board you get. And I really believe those prices are set the way they are because of how much money it takes, how much time it takes. When you pay someone for a job, like a 9-to-5 job, you pay them for their time and you pay them for their knowledge. You pay them for their expertise. Mm-hmm. Same with any freelance job. And as artists, I'm sure we can understand that, you know. A lot of it has to do with how good you are at making that product. And, you know, well, I'll talk a little bit more about this in episode 3, but nowadays there are a lot of Instagram companies who have decided to price their decks at a point which I don't believe they are worth, if I'm completely honest. Like, I know there are some companies who are investing in realware when they really shouldn't be at that stage yet, if that makes sense, because it's no secret that there are certain things that you can, there are certain like realware heat transfer graphics that you can get, I think like from the China market. I'm not 100% sure, but essentially, there are just so many companies right now that I know of, that don't focus on the craftsmanship of the deck itself. So there will be dyed plies or dyed veneer that isn't dyed all the way through or dyed properly, and so there's some fading, but they'll maybe try to cover it up with a heat transfer graphic or a paper graphic. And that's something I've noticed like a quick change in for fingerboard decks, is that a lot of people are trying to cover like somewhat poor craftsmanship with graphics. Don't get me wrong, there are obviously still a lot of people who, you know, make good quality stuff, but there is also a bunch of kids nowadays who just start a fingerboard company and think that they can price it at whatever as long as they hype the company up.
Yeah, there's the whole spectrum of it, and you know, that's like the one end, and then the other end is that there are companies, and this is a little bit less relevant, but like there are companies that'll put out their decks for like $6, right? And what you need to realize is, yes, it's not like I have obviously as a carpenter looked into what it's going to be to start making decks, and there's a reason I haven't, is because the reason I haven't is because I understand that the initial investment to make a quality fingerboard is pretty significant. I mean, you can, like Annie said, you could start a fingerboard company with $200. Like, you can get 3D printed molds, and you can cut all your decks by hand and sand them by hand, and get heat transfer graphics that are already made and stuff. Like, you can definitely do that, and you shouldn't be discouraged to start your company. But like, if I'm gonna do it, you know, I'd want to do it correctly, and just the investment is pretty heavy. So what I've kind of realized with like these companies that put out decks for like, you know, less than $10, like, that isn't sustainable forever. Like, eventually you're gonna have to change your product and make it higher quality, and that's going to come with an investment. So you're going to have to raise your deck prices. And so, and you obviously touch on this on your video, like, where it's like, you know, people are this is, for some companies, this is their job, this is their, like, this is how they make their living. And when you think like, if they could only get $15 for a board, like, they're going to stop making boards and go somewhere else, you know? Like, in order to ensure this quality, you have to look at like someone's hourly rate and how much time they're actually putting into making a quality board. And so, like, I mean, we're talking about decks specifically. The same goes for trucks. The same goes for wheels, you know, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And so that's kind of why I don't have a problem spending $45, $50 on a fingerboard, because I look at the process and the art form, and it's just like so much more than just like throwing some decks in a mold, sanding them, and sending them on their way. You know, there's so much more that goes into it. Yeah. So
I also don't know about you, but like, I know about you, but I don't know about like our general audience, you know. I can tell, yeah, you guys. So I think we can tell when a company is looking for money, as in they're doing it for the money, or when the deck comes at that specific price point because of whatever reason. So I'll use Flint as an example again. A lot of their decks are $50, okay? Most of their decks are like $50. But that price comes with, especially more recently, a lot of their decks are artist series boards, which means they probably paid an artist. So even if you're a photographer, I think a lot of you probably think that for photos you can't possibly charge a ton of money, but like Evan will know more than anyone, because I think you've done way more paid jobs in photography than I have, but it takes so much time and effort to take a good photo, edit it well, and just maximize the quality of it. Recently, I've been doing some graphics for people, and that's not where I want my money to come from. But depending on the company, I'll say, oh, I want like 10% of whatever sales you make, or I'll ask them to pay upfront per graphic. And like, honestly, it depends. But, you know, like, again, a company will have to spend their own money to pay that artist and then get that stuff onto a deck. You know, like, obviously, like that makes no sense in my head, but like, as in, I feel like I've stated the obvious. But I'm just looking at my wall now, and another company is Puritan Holtz, and I mean, the quality of those paintings are insane. And yeah, I mean,
no, absolutely.
how can you not pay a crazy amount for that?
So yeah, an artist series for like a fingerboard company obviously is going to cost more because you're paying the artist as well.
I wanted to quickly just touch on the price of like China trucks that have been quality controlled. And I mean, it's already in like what I've just said. You know, the reason why, for example, Fingerboard Connoisseur G3 trucks, despite being China trucks, are priced at the price they are is because, like I said earlier, Casey really, really takes the time to quality control everything. And he spends quite a bit of money buying trucks only for less than 75% or just about 75% of those trucks to actually work well, and those screws and lock nuts to work well. I will always trust Fingerboard Connoisseur because I recently bought from a company who sold China trucks, and the base plate was messed up. And the price wasn't high at all. But like you said earlier, if you buy cheap, you buy twice. So yeah. I'd rather buy a set of G3 trucks for I think it's $11 or $13, depending on whether it's 32 or 34 millimeters. But I'd much rather pay that amount of money knowing that the screws and the lock nuts will fit 100%. But that's just me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, in the grand scheme of things too, I mean, like, you could spend $50 on trucks, or when we're like spend a little bit more these days is $13, you know, like that's pretty cool. And I like that people have been able to figure out how to quality control China trucks to a point.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a super cool thing to see in the scene, and I'm glad that people are doing it. So yeah, is there anything else you want to say on the topic before we do a recap?
No, I'm good.
I'm also good. Okay. So it's not about, you know what we forgot? Let's touch on this super quick before we sign off, because I feel like this is going to get long. It is not about your gear. It is about who you are as a fingerboarder.
Whoa.
Don't think that just because you have some expensive gear, it's going to make you any better. If you can't kickflip on a $30 board, you're not going to just magically learn because you spent $150. And I say that just because, you know, Annie and I both working in the film and photography industry, you always hear it's not about the gear, it's about the photographer, you know? Like, you could give me a red cinema camera, and you could give Annie a Canon T3i, and she'd still come back with better footage, just because that's who you are as a filmmaker.
I don't know if that's true.
I am not a good filmmaker. You should see some of the garbage work I've put together.
A red, though, will have much better color profile. Anyway.
Anyway. Yeah, but there are films with Academy Awards that were shot on iPhones. So I think it's film singular, but still.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Who's texting these? So yeah, don't think that you need to go out and spend all this money to make yourself a better fingerboarder. There's, room for an expensive fingerboard, but like you need to get that when you're ready for it, not when you think that like it'll make you anything. Like it'll make you better. So
if there's anything that you think our listeners should spend a decent amount of money on, what would you say?
For me, it's wheels. I would say that anytime I use a fingerboard that I am not like comfortable on, it's because the wheels are just too tight or they don't even have like working bearings at all. So yeah, I would definitely think that wheels. And then also don't underestimate the power of replacing your bushings every few months.
My God, yeah.
That depends on how often you fingerboard. If you fingerboard every day, you should replace them like every month or two because they're not that expensive. But, if you're like, I mean, as of late, I've only been doing it like twice a week. So like I don't need to probably replace my bushings for a few months. But yeah, so those are like my two things. What about you? I feel like I know your answer.
I actually don't know 100%. I kind of think it's the deck.
Okay.
Because I can ride CNC bearing wheels no problem, I think. But the board for me matters a lot because of the concave.
Mm-hmm.
And not pop, but just like the shape overall matters a lot to me. Like I can't imagine riding a broken knuckle deck because I don't know about now, but back in the day, there was only one shape and it was so ridiculously deep. It was just like high kicks, high concave, deep concave, and like really, really defined kicks. And that was like horrible for me. But yeah, I feel like for me, it's the deck.
Okay. Yeah, and again, that's one of those things where it comes down to personal preference as well. Like everybody's going to have a different answer. So it's just kind of important to see what you like. And yeah, so even if you're, not a great fingerboarder, don't be discouraged to, like don't think that you can't get an expensive setup. You can, but just make sure you keep the mindset that like it's not going to make you better. So yeah, that's kind of everything I have on this topic. Do you have anything you want to add before we do a recap?
Nope. I think you summed it up really, really well. So Evan, in conclusion, does the gear matter? Like, do you need the $150 setup?
No, but it's complicated. Like we said
no,
before.
But it's like a Facebook status. Facebook relationship status. It's complicated.
It's complicated. Who does that? Who just like, have you ever set your Facebook status to it's complicated?
I think I probably did when I was like 12.
What was so complicated at 12?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I don't think that. I only have a Facebook because of college related things. Like when I was trying to find a roommate freshman year, I made a Facebook page. I don't think I have ever personally posted on it. I don't think I've ever established a relationship with anybody on Facebook. And I would honestly be surprised if Ava did as well. And we've been together like 2.5 years. So I don't know. But
anyway,
it's complicated. So just remember, with gear, there's a difference between buying something cheap and buying something that's inexpensive. And if you buy cheap, you're going to buy it again because cheaply made things are going to fall apart. And also just, it's important to remember that there's a reason that this gear costs so much, and it's because it is, artist made, and people are able to make a living off of it, which is cool. But, they can't do that without your support. And so make sure that you're buying from reputable companies and companies that are just in it for the scene and to support. And yeah, that's really
like fingerboarding is like, fingerboards are toys like to us, but for the people who make the fingerboard gear. Like for them, it's an art, and it's also for a lot of people a way to make a living. And we're not saying like, and again, like really be able to distinguish the people who are in it for the money and the people who sort of happen to be able to make this like a part of their income, or their like main income. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so thank you guys for listening to this episode, and for the next episode, what are we touching on?
The next topic is going to be about fingerboarding and our social lives, so how fingerboarding fits in, if it does at all. And yeah, so don't forget to, if you're listening to this on whatever platform, don't forget to stay tuned. You can find us at the Fingerboard Brew on Spotify and on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe just so you're, up to date. And we'll be posting like fingerboard like content or behind the scenes stuff on our YouTube, as well as our Instagram, which is also the Fingerboard Brew. You can just find us on the Fingerboard Brew.
So yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See ya.
And then the song.